Let's discuss the body planes. The body planes include the sagittal plane, the coronal or the frontal plane, and the transverse, axial, or the horizontal plane. The sagittal plane tends to divide the body into right and left parts. There are two types of sagittal plane, the median sagittal plane, or you can call it the median plane, and the parasagittal plane. The coronal or the frontal plane divides the body into anterior and posterior parts, while the transverse, axial, or horizontal plane divides the body into superior and inferior, or you can say upper and lower parts, respectively. For instance, a transverse section through the abdomen would divide or separate the upper abdominal organs from the lower abdominal organs. I'm going to be using this as a typical illustration of demonstrating how the planes or how it divides the body rather. So the first one is the sagittal plane. The sagittal plane tends to divide the body into right and left parts. Now let's say that this is the body. So the sagittal plane is going to be dividing the body into right and the left part. Now there are two types of sagittal plane. We have the mid-sagittal plane and the parasagittal plane. The mid-sagittal plane will divide the body into right and left equal halves or parts, while the other one will divide the body into right and left unequal parts. So the difference is that the mid-sagittal will divide it into equal halves, while the parasagittal will divide it into unequal halves. Then the next one is the coronal or the frontal. The coronal plane is going to divide the body into anterior and posterior. Now, when you make a coronal section or a coronal division of the body, you are going to be viewing the anterior part from the posterior part of the body. So it's going to be dividing it into anterior part and posterior part. Let's say, for instance, this is my chest. So the frontal section of this chest is going to separate the chest from the back. So the frontal chest section of this scan is going to separate the anterior view of the scan from the posterior view of the scan. So the coronal plane is going to be dividing the body into anterior parts and posterior parts. Then the last one is the axial plane or the transverse plane. So this particular plane is going to divide the body into upper and lower parts. So it's going to divide the body like this. It's going to divide the body like this into upper part and lower part. So if you are viewing the axial section of the abdomen, so you are viewing the inferior, the upper part, and the lower part. So the first one, let's take it over again to summarize. The first one, which is the sagittal, will divide the body like this into right and left, either equal or unequal. Then the coronal will divide the body like this into anterior and posterior, while the axial will divide the body like this into inferior or upper end and lower end. So that is the planes of the body. Then the next one we are going into is the section of the body. There are also three sections of the body. So having talked about the planes, the next one we'll be talking about is the section. The first one we are having is the cross section. The cross section is going to be cutting across the transverse plane, in the sense that the cross section of the arm is going to divide the arm into the upper part of the arm from the lower part of the arm. The cross section is made from the transverse plane. And having told you that the transverse plane divides the body into the upper part and the lower part, so a cross section of the arm is going to be cutting across the arm, separating it from the upper part and the lower part. So the cross section makes use of the word transverse plane, which is going to be dividing the body into the upper end and the lower end. The second one is the longitudinal section. A cut along the sagittal and the coronal plane is a longitudinal section cut. Now, this type of section shows the length and the depth of the internal structure. The longitudinal section is a cut across the sagittal and the coronal. Remember that the sagittal is going to be dividing the body into the right and left, which is showing you the length, while the coronal will be dividing the body into anterior and posterior, showing you the depth. So the longitudinal section is going to be cutting across the sagittal and the coronal plane, showing you the length and the depth of the internal structures. Now the last one is the oblique section. Oblique section is neither a cut made from axial plane or coronal plane or the sagittal plane. This cut is not made from any of the planes. Rather, it's a cut that shows you the other parts of the body that the sagittal, the coronal, and the transverse could not show you. So it's going to show you a section that the cross section could not show you, or the longitudinal section could not show you. So that is the oblique section. An oblique section is a section that is made at an angle other than 90 degrees to a plane. So therefore, an oblique section of a leg might cut across the muscles and the bones at a diagonal angle, then providing a different view than a straight horizontal or vertical cut. So when you cut something via an oblique section, you are neither cutting it in a cross-sectional view or in a longitudinal view. That simply means that you are neither telling us the length or the depth, or you are also neither telling us whether it is right or left, or whether it is anterior or posterior, or whether it is the upper end or the lower end. So it's going to be showing us other views that the sagittal and the coronal plane could not show us. So that is the plane and the sections of the human body. Thank you very much. We have come to the end of this class. See you in my next video. Bye.